The sun doesn't just shine in the desert, it presses down like a hand trying to crush the earth. The air doesn't move, the land doesn't speak. The ground is dry, cracked, and waiting for someone to give up Dot in the Wild West. Water meant everything. You could have a strong horse, a full saddlebag, a sharp gun, but if you didn't have water, none of it mattered. Settlers heading west carried barrels on wagons. They filled canteens at every muddy creek. Some dug holes into riverbeds, hoping for a slow drip from deep below. But most days, there was no river, no drip, just sand. And sun. The old map slide. Or maybe the men who made them just hoped there'd be more. 30 miles to the next spring, one map said Dot, but when you got there, the spring was dust. Or bones, or a few yellow weeds that crumbled when you touched them. Cowboys told each other stories about hidden wells. Follow the crow, they said. It knows where the water hides. But the crows were liars too. They circled and vanished. Some native tribes knew where to look. They didn't follow birds or maps. They followed the land. The way the wind changed, the way certain plants leaned. They knew that water spoke in signs, small, quiet ones, settlers. Begged them for help. Some helped, some didn't, not because they were cruel, but because they had families too. And water wasn't something you shared with strangers if it meant your own child might not live through the week. People got desperate. One man tried to boil cactus. Another drank the blood of his own horse. Sometimes they just opened their mouths and hoped rain would fall. It didn't. The body can go 3 days without water. That's what doctors say. But out here, the desert didn't wait 3 days. It broke you on the first. Your lips cracked. Your tongue swelled. Your thoughts stopped making sense. Some people walked in circles. Others saw lakes that weren't their. And when they fell, the ground didn't catch them gently. It was hard, hot. Final. Buzzards came first. Then silence. Even the wind had better things to do. There were water holes. Sometimes little places that saved lives, but they were not safe. Coyotes came at night. Snakes curled under rocks. And then thirsty, angry men waited near the pools, guarding them with rifles. You drink? You pay. Sometimes the price was money. Sometimes the price was something else. A horse. A weapon. A promise. And sometimes the price was just your place in line. Women and children didn't always get first sip. And there were fights. Loud ones. Then quiet ones. One swing of a fist, and someone fell. One shot of a gun, and someone didn't get back up. The water always stayed calm. It didn't care who died beside it. Wells were better, if you could find one. If you could dig deep enough. But even wells went dry. And sometimes you didn't know until the bucket came up empty. Over and over again, some towns built pumps. But pumps broke, and the men who knew how to fix them didn't always survive the trip. So people learned to stretch a sip. To suck cloth soaked in dew. To pray. Rain was a gift, but it didn't come in silver showers. It came fast, angry, as if the sky had held it too long and now didn't care where it landed. Flash floods hit hard, washed away wagons, drowned sleeping travelers. But people smiled after, because at least they could drink. That was the trade in the Wild West. You took your chances with storms, or you dried up slow. Some built rain catchers out of tin and old cloth. Some tied buckets to trees and waded through the night. But most just hoped. That was all you could. Do. Hope for clouds. Hope for shade. Hope for something wet. Even the animals knew the game. Coyotes moved in packs. Horses sniffed the air and pulled toward the wind. Birds flew low, wings heavy. Sometimes the animals were right. Sometimes they weren't. People followed them anyway. There were no promises in the Wild West, only guesses. You guess where water might be. You guessed who might have some. You guessed whether today was your last walk, and you kept walking because standing still meant death. Men wrote letters before they died of thirst. Some begged their wives for forgiveness. Some cursed the land. One man just wrote, so hot, so dry. That was all. No one ever found his body. Just the note. Half buried in sand. Water was not gold. It was more than that. Gold could buy things, guns, whiskey, fences. Water bought time. One more mile. One more night. One more breath. And in the end, that was what the Wild West really was. Not a land of heroes. Not a land of justice, but a land of thirst and those who made it through. They didn't talk about bravery. They didn't talk about grit. They just said, I found water. And in that world, that was the only story that mattered. In the Wild West, the worst pain didn't always come from a bullet or a blade. Sometimes it started with a single tooth, just one, a little ache in the back of your mouth, nothing serious. At first, just a dull throb. You thought it would go away, but it did in single quotes T that got worse. The pain crawled down your jaw, into your ear, into your neck. Your face began to swell. You couldn't chew. You couldn't sleep. You couldn't speak without wincing. And then you realized something awful. There were no dentists here, not in the town, not in the next one. Either. Maybe not for 100 miles. If you were lucky, a traveling doctor might pass through. But luck was rare in the West. So people learned to live with the pain or die from it. A bad tooth wasn't just annoying. It was dangerous. Once it got infected, the poison spread into your blood, into your brain, into your heart. There were no pills. Clean tools. No way to stop it once it began. They called it tooth fever. Some called it jaw rot. But it didn't matter what name you gave it. If it got bad enough, it killed you. Slow. And loud. Sometimes the whole side of your face would swell up. Like a melon. Red. Hot. Pulsing. People wrapped cloth around their heads, hoping pressure would help. They bit down on mother to stop themselves from screaming, but it didn't help. Nothing did. Except one thing, the pliers. Not clean. Silver ones like today. Old iron ones. Rusty, thick, and cold. They weren't made for teeth, but they were all people. Had. A friend might hold your shoulders. Another might hold your legs. And the one with the pliers, he would pray. Hold still. Bite down. This'll be quick. It wasn't. The sound was worse than the pain. A snap, a crack, then a scream. Silence. Sometimes the tooth came out clean. Other times it broke, left pieces behind. And those little pieces, they caused more pain than the whole tooth. Ever did. Whiskey was the only medicine. You didn't sip it. You drank it fast, burning your throat, clouding your mind, hoping it would help. Hoping you'd pass out before the pliers went in. It didn't always work. Sometimes it made people vomit. Other times it made them mean. They'd swing their arms. Kick their feet, spit blood and curses into the dirt, but the tooth still had to come out. Because if it didn't, you would die. Simple as that. Some folks tried other ways. They tied string to the tooth and the other end to a door. They tied it to a horse and slapped its back. They used knives. Nails. Even hot coals. But most of the time, they just lived with the pain until it was too late. And when they died, it wasn't pretty. Their faces swollen and red, their breath sour, their skin pale from days. Without sleep, they died shaking, whispering things no one could understand. Some wrote letters before they passed, not to say goodbye, but to beg, don't let this happen to my boy. Tell the next town to build a doctor's shop. Burn my body so it doesn't spread. Tooth pain didn't care who you were, rich or poor. Young or old, man or woman, everyone had teeth. And every tooth was a chance to suffer. Children lost baby teeth with tears and trembling hands, but it was the grown-ups who feared them most because they knew One bad tooth could end everything, and it often did. If you were lucky, someone in your town had strong hands and no fear. They weren't a doctor, but they became one, a tooth puller. They worked in back rooms or outside. In the sun, where the blood wouldn't stain the floor, they charged a little or nothing because they knew what you were going through and they knew the pliers were at mercy. They were survival. No one smiled in the Wild West. Without reason. Not just because life was hard, but because smiles showed teeth. And people didn't want you to see how bad theirs were. Brown. Broken. Missing. Rotten. That's what the desert did to you. Dry air. Dusty food. No toothbrushes. No clean water. Just grit. Grit in your mouth. In your gums. Between every bite. The pain never left. It became part of you. Small reminder that this land was wild. And so was your body. You learned to chew on one side, to sip soup for days. To hum instead of speak. To scream into your pillow when no one was around. And when the pain got too loud, you lit a fire, poured a glass. Held the pliers, and whispered to yourself, just do it. Some never had the courage. They waited too long. The tooth won. The fever took hold, and they slipped away. One slow breath at a time. Gone. Because of something the size of a fingernail. And yet, in the Wild West, that was all it took. In the Wild West, men feared bullets. But they should have feared what came after. Getting shot didn't always kill you. Not right away. The bullet might miss your heart, might miss your lungs, might even pass through clean. People thought that meant they were safe, but they weren't. The real danger began after the smoke cleared, after the fight was over, after the shooter walked away. That's when the pain began. Slow. Deep. And deadly. There were no clean hospitals. No fresh white bandages. No soft beds. There were just wood floors, dirty hands, and rough cloth. If someone tried to help, they used whatever they had, a torn shirt, a bottle of strong drink, maybe a needle heated over a candle. But nothing was clean. An infection didn't need much. One bit of dust. One touch from a dirty finger. One fly landing on the open wound. That was enough. The bullet wasn't the worst part. The worst part came later, when your skin turned red and hot. When your legs swelled like a log. When the pain wouldn't stop, and your body began to shake. People called it wound fever. Others just said, he's turning bad. It meant your body was losing the fight. You'd sweat one moment, freeze the next. You'd moan without meaning to. And if the wound didn't drain, you'd die. Not in a blaze of glory. Not like in the books, but in bed. Alone. With a cloth between your teeth, so the neighbors wouldn't hear you scream. That was the truth of the Wild West. Most men didn't die from the bullet. They died from what the bullet left behind. Blood. Poisoning. Rotten flesh. A fever that boiled your brain. Sometimes the town doctor tried to save you, but doctor didn't mean much. Maybe he was once a barber. Maybe he'd read a few pages of a book. Maybe he just had strong hands and wasn't afraid of blood. He'd bring a knife. He'd bring thread. He might say, this'll hurt. But that was a joke. It already hurt. Everything did. Some wounds needed to be cut open. To clean out the bad parts. To find the bullet. To drain the pus. No sleep. No medicine. Just bite down and hold still. If you move too much, he might slip. Cut too deep. And then it was over anyway. Some people begged for their wounds to be burned. Hot metal, boiling oil. They thought fire would kill the infection. Sometimes it worked. Most of the time, it didn't, but people tried. Because the other choice was waiting to die. And waiting felt worse. Gunfights were fast, but healing was slow. And most didn't get better. They got worse. The skin around the wound would turn black. The smell would change. People stopped visiting, stopped hoping. They just waited for the last Breath dot then came the digging dot another grave dot another name forgotten. And all because of a single bullet, not even a kill. Shot, just a wound, a scratch, a hole that no one could fix. That was the truth. The Wild West didn't need many bullets to take your life, just one, even in the arm dot the leg, the shoulder. If it got infected, you were finished. Some tried to cut the limb off, a leg, an arm, a finger. Better to lose a part than lose it all. But that came with risk too. The sawing, the blood loss, the screams, and again. No medicine. No sleep after that. Just pain. And sometimes, nothing left to live for. A cowboy with one leg couldn't ride. A gunslinger with one arm couldn't shoot. Farmer without a hand couldn't plow. Even survival had a price, a heavy one. Some chose not to pay it. They whispered goodbye and let go. Others held on and told stories later. Got shot in the ribs, left for dead. Woke up 3 days later with a dog licking my face. Chewed a stick while they dug the bullet out. Didn't sleep for a week. They told it with pride. But their eyes always looked far away. Because they remembered how close they'd come, how thin the line really was. One bullet, one dirty rag, one wrong move, and they wouldn't be here. They'd be in the ground. With all the others who thought they'd walk it off. The Wild West didn't care how tough you were. It didn't care how fast you drew or how straight you shot. It only cared what happened next. And most of the time, what happened next was worse. That's what they never wrote down. That the bullet wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The beginning of the fight to stay alive. The fight your own body might lose. And in that world, losing meant everything. The fire crackled. It was the only sound for miles. The stars hung above like cold eyes. The wind whispered through the trees. But you didn't listen. You were tired. So tired. So you sat by the fire, your back warm, your boots off, your eyes heavy. And that's when you made the biggest mistake a person can make out here. You fell asleep. People think the fire keeps you safe. It doesn't. It just gives the night a place to look. A glow to gather around, a smell to follow. The fire tells the world someone is here. And in the Wild West, not everyone who comes looking is friendly. Bandits saw campfires as open invitations. A light in the dark meant supplies. Food. Money. A horse worth taking, or just someone too tired to fight back. They came on quiet. Feet. Sometimes 2 of them. Sometimes 10. Their faces covered, their guns drawn. You wouldn't even hear them coming. Not with your boots off. Not with your head resting on a saddlebag. They didn't always shoot. Sometimes they waited. Watched. Listened. Till you snore, studied your things, picked up your rifle, smiled. Sometimes they just took what they needed and left. Other times, they wanted more. And if you woke up, you had a choice. Fight half asleep or die wide awake. Some woke to a boot in their ribs, others to a hand over their mouth, and a few didn't wake at all. Their fire burned bright until morning, but they were gone before the sun rose. The cold didn't care either. It came slowly. Softly. Crawling over the ground like fog. It wrapped around your legs, crept into your bones, and if you were too tired to keep feeding the fire, if the flames died, the cold moved faster. Out here, there were no walls. No blankets thick enough. No roofs to stop the wind. Just sky, and whatever you wore on your back. If you slept too long, you didn't wake up. You just stopped shivering, and that was the end. Some people called it the silent sleep. It happened to good men, strong women, even children, because the West didn't care how brave you were. If the fire went out, so did you. Then there were the wolves. You didn't see them. You heard them far off at first. A low call, then an answer, then another. Closer. They didn't come for the fire. They came for the scent. Meat cooking, bread, warming, the sweat on your clothes, the blood on your boots from the day's hunt. They circled just outside the light, Eyes glowing dot, waiting dot wolves don't charge in right away. They wait for weakness dot wait for silence. Wait for stillness. A man asleep beside a fire is the stillest thing in the world dot, and they know it. Some people said too, sleep with your boots on dot. Others said to tie a bell to your pack. Bells don't always ring when they should, and boots don't help if your hand can't reach your gun in time. You hear a twig snap, you open your eyes, too late. The growl is already close dot too close. That's why cowboys slept in shifts. One watched, the other rested dot, then switched. All through the night, because if everyone slept, no one survived. The fire wasn't protection. It was warning dot. It told the cold, the wild, and the wicked where to go dot. It said, there's something alive here. And in the Wild West, that was enough reason for everything else to come looking. Sometimes it wasn't animals or outlaws dot. Sometimes it was just loneliness. The night was long, the silence endless, and the mind, it wandered dot. Thoughts came in like ghosts dot, memories dot, regrets dot, faces of people you left behind, voices you'd never hear again. Started to talk to yourself dot, whispered dot, sang quiet songs, anything to keep the dark from feeling alive. But the dark was alive dot. It listened dot. It waited dot, and sometimes it spoke back, a rustle, a crack, gust of wind that sounded like a name. You turned your head dot. Nothing dot. You reached for your gun, your heart pounding dot. Still nothing. But by now you were wide awake, too scared to close your eyes, and that was the only way to survive. Stay awake dot. Stay ready. Because the Wild West didn't sleep dot. It watched dot. It hunted. It waited for you to let your guard down dot. So the smart ones didn't. They built small fires, low flames. They slept facing the woods dot. They placed stones in a circle around the camp, not because it helped, but because it gave them something to believe in. A border, a rule, a line between safety and danger. But the truth? There was no line. The danger was always there dot, just beyond the light dot, just behind the tree, just waiting for you to fall asleep. That's why they said, sleep in the day if you must, but not at night, not by the fire, not when it's quiet, because the fire doesn't protect you dot. It only shows where you are, and everything else already knows dot. In the Wild West, when someone got hurt, they didn't ask, where's the hospital? They asked, can you help? And sometimes the only one who could help was you dot. No doctor dot, no nurse, just a cabin, a blanket, a sharp knife, and hope. You didn't go to school for this. You didn't have books or training. That the man in front of you is bleeding, and he was looking at you like you were the only thing, standing between him and the grave. That's how it was out here. You were the doctor now. You didn't have clean gloves, just old rags and shaky hands. You didn't have medicine dot, just hot water, a bottle of whiskey, and maybe a spoon to bite down on dot. Now fancy tools dot, no soft lights dot, just a FIRELIGHT dot, and silence dot, and blood dot. It might be a bullet in the leg, broken arm, a cut from a sharp branch, or something worse, a deep wound, a rattlesnake bite, a crushed rib from falling off a horse. Whatever it was, it had to be handled right there dot, right now. You told the injured person to hold still. You boiled the knife in the fire dot. It didn't make it clean dot, just less dirty. You poured whiskey over the wound. They screamed or passed out or bit their tongue until it bled dot. You told yourself, I'm doing this to help. Even when your hands were shaking, even when the blood wouldn't stop, you tied cloth around the cut dot, tight dot, tighter dot, too tight. You didn't know. You just hoped it worked. Sometimes it did dot, sometimes it didn't. And you learned the hard way. You learned that people didn't always wake up. That bleeding didn't always stop. That infection could spread, even when everything looked fine. You learned how a body goes cold dot, how a person's breathing changes before the end. And when that happened, You buried them and you remembered that so next time. Maybe you did it different. Maybe you used a cleaner rag. Maybe you wrapped the bandage tighter or looser. Maybe you cut higher on the leg when the rot set in, because sometimes you had to cut off the foot to save the leg, cut off the leg to save the life. You didn't want to, but there was no one else. You were the doctor now. You told the others to hold him down. You heated the saw. You counted to 3, then cut. He screamed out, so did you. But you didn't stop. You couldn't when it was done. You poured more whiskey on the wound in his mouth, into your unshaking hands, and you prayed that he would live, that he would forgive you, that you hadn't made it worse out here. People didn't thank you for trying. They thanked you for surviving, and if they didn't make it, their family didn't blame you because they knew you did what you could with what you had, and most times that wasn't much. Some injuries didn't bleed. They burned like fever, like coughing fits that wouldn't stop. Gave tea honey herbs sometimes. They helped sometimes not. People drowned in their own lungs, burned up from inside, and you sat there beside them. Useless a fake doctor with no answers just prayers and damp. Cloth it was lonely work heavy. Work the kind of work that followed you long after the sun went down. You remembered every scream every failure, every face that didn't wake up, and still you did it again because someone had to. When a child broke their arm, you pulled it straight. When a woman gave birth, you held her hand. When a man came in coughing blood, you made him a place to rest. You didn't wear white, you wore dust and sweat and sorrow. But out here, that made you a healer because no one else was coming no wagon with a red cross no man in clean clothes with a silver case just you, and a choice to help to try to do the best you could in a world that gave you nothing, to work with and sometimes it worked. The bleeding stopped, the fever broke the coughing quieted and the next morning they opened their eyes, looked at you and smiled. That smile was your reward, more than gold, more than thanks it meant they lived, and you helped you with no training no title just courage, and a strong stomach so you wrapped up your tools, cleaned your hands the best you could, and waited for the next knock on the door because in the Wild West, you didn't need a license to be a doctor. You just needed to be there when it mattered most in the Wild West. There was no number to call no loud siren in the distance no police lights. Rushing down a road there was just you. And the problem, if someone robbed you, no one chased them. If someone stabbed you, no one showed up with a bag of tools if someone shot you and rode away. You were lucky if someone found your body before the sun did. That's the truth. There was no one to save you. You had to save yourself. Maybe you were in a small town, the kind with one street, one saloon, one man who called himself sheriff, but even he wasn't always there. He might be drunk, might be out of bullets, might be scared of the same men who just took your horse. Sometimes the sheriff worked for the robbers, sometimes he was the robber, and sometimes he was already dead so if trouble came, it came fast and it didn't knock You learned to watch the road to lock your cabin to sleep with your back to the wall and your gun close by not because you wanted to fight, but because you knew you had to there was no help on the way no cavalry riding over the hill. That only happened in stories out here. The only footsteps in the dirt were your own, and maybe the ones chasing you. If you were lucky, a neighbor might hear the shots, but they wouldn't come running. They'd wait listen count the silence, then maybe come check in the morning, because helping got people killed, and those folks had their own families to think about. They weren't going to risk their lives for yours, not unless you were blood, and sometimes not even then. Outlaws didn't wear black hats. They wore regular clothes, smiled. When they passed, shared a drink in town, then waited until dark. That's when they came. For your horse, your money, your food, or worse. And when they knocked, you didn't answer, you didn't speak. You held your breath and prayed the door would hold. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. And there was no one to call. No backup, just you and a wooden door. Sometimes you weren't the victim, sometimes you saw someone else get hurt, a stranger beaten in the street, a traveler robbed outside the stable. You watched. You thought about helping, but you didn't, because you remembered the rule. No one's coming to save you. So don't try to save anyone. Else. It was cold logic, but it kept people alive. If you tried to be a hero, you usually didn't make it home, and your family had to bury you alone. Still, there were a few who tried. They heard a scream. They ran toward it. They stood between the danger and someone weaker. Sometimes they made a difference. Most of the time, they didn't, but people remembered them. Not their names. Not their stories. But the idea that someone once tried to help. It gave others a little hope. Even if the world remained the same. In the wild, there were no fences. No safe zones. Just land. People, some kind, some cruel, and no one to judge them but time. If your wagon broke, you fixed it. If your roof leaked, you patched it. If someone broke in and took everything you had, you started over. If you were strong enough. And if you weren't, you faded. Quietly. Like a candle in the wind. The land didn't mourn you. The town didn't. Stop. Another person moved into your home, used your things, walked the same dirt road you once did, because that was life. Here. Fast. Hard. And unforgiving. If you wanted safety, you had to build it. With your hands, your voice, your actions. You had to teach people to think twice before crossing you, not with anger, but with readiness, a steady stare, a quiet strength. That's what kept trouble away. Sometimes. But not always, because danger wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came as a friend, a neighbor, a deal too good to be true. And when it turned, you had seconds to act. To draw first. To duck. To run. No warning. No protection. Just instinct. That's what the Wild West taught you. How to survive without help. How to prepare for silence, because silence was the answer to every cry. You learned not to trust strangers, not to rely on anyone who said, "Don't worry, I've got you." Because when the time came, they might be the first to run. So you carried your own rope, your own knife, your own faith, not in others, but in yourself. And maybe, just maybe, in your horse, because that was the only partner who didn't leave, didn't lie, didn't make promises it couldn't keep. The truth is simple. In the Wild West, you could scream, you could cry, you could beg, but no one was coming. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. So you learned to stop hoping for help. And started becoming the help you needed. In the Wild West. Hunger wasn't just a feeling. It was a sound. Whisper in your belly, a twist in your gut, a slow, aching reminder that nothing was coming. No wagon full of grain. No basket of bread. Just wind. Cold. Hard wind. The kind that froze the soil and buried the fields. Winter came early. Some years. And stayed too long. The crops never stood a chance. Corn withered before it grew. Potatoes froze deep underground. Even the chickens stopped laying. And when the food was gone, it didn't disappear all at once. It left slowly. First, the good things. The butter, the salt, the sugar. Then the bread, then the meat, then the dried beans you forgot you had. And when all that was gone, you were still hungry. You looked in every corner. Boiled bones. You scraped the bottom of the sack. You counted crumbs like they were gold. Some people chewed leather. Old boots, saddle, straps. They softened them in hot water, added wild herbs, pretended it was stew. It wasn't. but it filled the mouth, and for a moment, that was enough. Some went out to hunt, but the animals were smarter. They moved south. Or stayed hidden. The deer were gone. The rabbits too fast. The birds too few. And sometimes the hunter didn't return. Too weak to pull the bow. Too slow to chase. Too tired to care. Others turned to things they never thought they would eat. Bark from trees. Roots they couldn't name. A stray dog. Bird's egg found under snow. Some people didn't ask what was in the pot. They just ate because silence was better than knowing, and hunger didn't care about pride. It only cared that you kept going. One more spoonful, one more day. That was the goal. To make it until tomorrow. Then tomorrow. Again. And again. Until the snow melted and the green came back. If it came back. Because sometimes the cold killed everything. Not just the plants. Not just the animals, but the people, too. You could hear it. The way someone's footsteps grew slower. The way they stared too long at. Nothing. The way they stopped coming to the table. And when they finally stopped breathing, it was quiet. But the hunger wasn't. It stayed behind. Still twisting, still aching, still whispering, "You're next." Some mothers fed their children and ate nothing. Some fathers walked miles hoping for berries, only to come back empty. Some neighbors shared. Others locked their doors. Because in the Wild West, you couldn't give what you didn't have. And sometimes kindness got you killed. So people kept to themselves, tucked their hunger into silence, wrapped their ribs in layers of wool and prayer. And hoped no one would see how thin they were. Some prayed for snow to end. Others prayed for it to take them. Because starving wasn't quick. It was slow. Slow fading. A slow forgetting. You forgot how food smelled. Forgot how it tasted. Forgot what it felt like to feel full. Some dreamed of meals. A warm pie. A roasted bird. A loaf of bread torn open and steamed. They woke with tears. Mouth dry, belly empty and still. They went on because that's what you did. You didn't complain, you didn't cry. Just move forward, even if it meant crawling, even if it meant watching someone you love fade away. Hunger made you quiet, made your thoughts slow, your hands weak, your legs soft, but still you moved. Because maybe, just maybe, spring was around the corner. Maybe the snow would melt. Maybe the rivers would rise. Maybe seeds would grow again. And maybe next winter you'd be ready. But no one ever really was. Because out here, one failed harvest was enough to break. You. One bad storm. One early freeze. One missed wagon of supplies. And you were done. Not from laziness. Not from foolishness. Just bad luck. That was all it took. People didn't talk much about starvation. It wasn't a hero's death. It wasn't loud. It didn't come with a gun or a scream. Just silence and stillness and empty bowls. But those who survived never forgot how it felt to watch your hands shake as you held a spoon of nothing. How it felt to count meals instead of days. How it felt to lose someone because you gave them your last bite. And yet, they went on, they planted again, hunted again, shared when they could, because hunger taught them something. Not just about food. But about each other. Who came to help. Who stayed behind. Who gave without being asked. Those memories stayed longer than the hunger, longer than the snow. And maybe that's why they survived. Not because of strength, but because of hope. Because somewhere deep inside, they believed the next season would be kinder, that the land would forgive, that the seeds would bloom, and the table would be full again. Someday. In the Wild West, trust was a dangerous thing. A smile didn't always mean kindness. A handshake didn't always mean peace. Sometimes it meant the opposite. Because out here, the person who looked friendly might be the one who hurt you first. People learned that the hard way. Stranger rides into town. Dust on his boots, hat pulled low. He asks for water. Maybe food, maybe a place to rest. You say yes because it feels right. Because turning someone away feels wrong. But deep down, you wonder, what's he hiding? A knife under the coat? A pistol in the saddlebag? A reason not to trust him? You try not to think about it. You pour the water. You nod politely. You try not to look nervous. Because showing fear was just as risky as showing kindness. And when the stranger leaves, you breathe again. This time, nothing happened. The next time, maybe it will. Because in the Wild West, everyone carried something, a secret, a weapon. Reason to run. You couldn't always tell who was. Dangerous. Some wore fine clothes and spoke with smooth voices. Others kept to the shadows and said nothing at all. But both could be trouble. The friendly ones and the quiet ones. No way to know. So you learn to keep your distance. Not too cold. Not too warm. Just enough to stay alive. Because a stranger could be a traitor, a traveler, a man looking for work, or someone with a price on his head, someone running from something, or someone sent to take what you had, your food. Your land, your life. It didn't take much. A wrong word, a long stare, a coin dropped in the wrong hand. And suddenly, the man you let into your home is standing over you with a weapon, and no one else is around because you trusted him, and he used that. Trust. It happened all the time. Two men meet on the trail. They ride together for a day, share a fire, share stories. Then, in the night, one is gone. So is the other's horse and his boots, and maybe more. All that's left is dust and silence. People told stories like that around campfires. Warnings. Really, don't trust too easy. Don't sleep too deep. Don't believe every story you hear, because some folks are better at lying than living. Some folks know how to wear a good face. Smile with their mouth, hide the truth with their eyes. They say things like, I've been traveling a long time. I'm just passing through. I mean no harm. And most of the time, maybe it's true, but not always. And not always is enough to keep you awake at night. Even in towns. The danger stayed. You walked into the saloon, bought a drink, sat down, and someone sat beside you. Maybe they just wanted to talk, or maybe they were watching your hands, waiting to see if you reached for your coin, waiting to see if you looked away. So they could move fast, real fast, because it didn't take long to rob a man, and even less to hurt him, especially when no one in the room would speak up because they didn't trust you either. They didn't know your name, didn't know where you came from, and even if they did, they had their own troubles, their own fears. So they looked away. That's how it worked. Trust was a risk. In the Wild West, risk could mean death. You kept your circle small. Family. Maybe a friend or two. People who'd proven themselves. People who stayed during storms. Who showed up when you were sick. Not the ones who smiled too much. Not the ones who asked too many questions. Those were the ones you watched, because the more someone wanted to know, the more they might be planning. Where you kept your food, where your horse was tied, where your rifle rested at night. If they asked once, maybe it was fine. Twice, you started wondering. 3 times, you kept your hand near your belt. That's just how things were. Not because people were evil, but because the land was hard and the weak didn't last. So some people took what they could, even if it meant hurting others, even if it meant smiling while they did it. Out here, kindness could be a trap, help could be bait. A ride offered might end in a lonely trail. A meal shared might end with empty cupboards. And a stranger's story might just be a setup, a way to lower your guard. To make you look the other way. To make you forget for 1 second, and that 1 second could be your last. That's why people stared so long before shaking. Hands dot why they checked the man's boots, his horse, his eyes, trying to see the truth beneath the dust, trying to stay alive one more day. You didn't hate strangers. You just didn't trust them. Not until they earned it. Not until they proved they weren't hiding a sharp edge behind their smile. Because in the Wild West, anyone could be the one who smiled, then stole Dot, the one who helped, then disappeared, the one who said, "Trust me," and made you wish you hadn't Dot in the Wild West. Not every danger carried a gun. Some dangers were. Smaller Dot, quieter Dot, they didn't shoot. They didn't shout Dot, they came in a cough Dot, in a fever Dot, in a touch. And they rode faster than any outlaw ever could Dot diseases Dot, they came with travelers Dot, with wagons. Full of dreams Dot, with soldiers marching Dot, with traders crossing rivers and borders. Some rode into town on horseback Dot, others came in through the wind. And once they arrived, they didn't leave, not without taking someone with them. Sometimes a few, sometimes many Dot, cholera Dot, dysentery Dot, smallpox Dot. These names didn't need explaining Dot when someone whispered them. Everyone listened and stepped back, because once a person got sick, the clock started ticking Dot. There were no hospitals Dot, no trained nurses Dot, no clean tools or strong medicines Dot, just water Dot, if you had it Dot, blankets Dot, if they were dry Dot, and prayers, if you believed. But most times none of it helped. The body would shake Dot, the lips would turn dry and cracked, the eyes would go distant, like they were already looking somewhere else. And then quiet, a quiet that no one wanted, a quiet that stayed long after the fever left the room. People were scared of the sick, even if it was someone they loved, even if it was someone they'd known forever, because getting close meant you might be next Dot in a town with no doctors. No one could afford to be next Dot, so people shut their doors, covered their mouths, looked the other way, not out of cruelty, but fear. A mother with small children could not risk getting sick. Man who worked alone on his land could not afford a week in bed Dot, so the sick were left to fight alone. A bucket of water outside the door, a piece of bread placed nearby Dot, then silence Dot, no one to talk to Dot, no one to hold their hand Dot, no one to bury them. If they lost the fight, sometimes the smell told the town before the news did that someone was gone and had been gone for days. Disease didn't care who you were Dot. It didn't care if you were kind or strong or young Dot. It touched children and elders, farmers and preachers, settlers and native people like Dot. No one was safe. Smallpox marked its victims forever if they lived. The red bumps covered faces, left scars that never went away. Some covered mirrors after they healed. Some never healed at all. Dot, cholera was worse Dot. It didn't wait. It stole water from the body Dot, fast Dot, so fast Dot. One morning you'd feel a little weak Dot. By nightfall you'd be gone. Dysentery was slower, but no less cruel. Pain that never ended Dot, no. Food stayed down Dot, no. Sleep brought rest Dot, just more pain Dot, and the fear that tomorrow would be worse. People said to boil your water Dot, to burn your clothes Dot, to move your camp. But sometimes it didn't matter. The disease had already followed. You Dot, riding behind like a shadow on a tired horse. Some towns were wiped out completely Dot, no. One left Dot, just empty cabins, broken fences, and the echo of voices that would never return. Travelers passed by, eyes down, afraid to stop, afraid to catch whatever was left behind. Sometimes they burned the houses Dot, to stop the sickness from spreading. Sometimes they just rode faster, hoping the next town would be cleaner Dot, safer Dot. It rarely was. Out here, people learn to tell stories in whispers. Don't go east, it's in the wells. Don't take that road, too many graves. Don't touch the wagon someone inside's coughing. Fear became part of daily life. People watched each other, watched for the first sign, a cough, a red face, a hand that shook too much, And when they saw it, they stepped back. You could be a friend in the morning and a stranger by sunset, because survival came first. And sometimes survival meant walking away, even when it hurt, even when the sick called out for help, help that never came, because no one was coming. No one could. There was no cure. No magic drink. No special root or herb. Just luck. And time. And sometimes that wasn't enough. So people prepared. They dug graves before they were needed. They wrote letters they might never send. They tied their belongings in small cloths, ready to be burned, and still they lived. Somehow. Some survived the fever. They woke one morning, weak but breathing. They drank water, took a few shaky steps, and when the town saw them walking again, there was silence. Then joy. Then shame for having given up too soon. But it was hard not to when death knocked so loudly. So often. So without mercy. So people learned to live carefully. To boil the water. To clean their hands. To stay quiet when someone coughed. To move on when someone didn't wait because they had to, because life in the wild West wasn't just about bullets or bandits. It was about breath and keeping it one day longer than the disease chasing you. Let's say you wake up in the Wild West. No warning. No help. Just you, standing in the middle of dust and silence. The sun is high. The wind is dry. The land stretches far in every direction. Your phone doesn't work. There's no internet. No GPS. No roads. No cars. Just a horse tied to a post. And a town ahead, built from wood and hope. Would you last the day? The morning might feel easy. The air is still cool. The town is quiet. You find a well and drink warm, strange tasting water. But at least it's something. You hear boots hitting dirt. People walk by, but no one smiles. They don't know you. And out here, strangers are dangerous. You step into a store. No lights. No machines. Just shelves of beans, flour, salt. No signs. No prices. No friendly greetings. You reach for something and the shopkeeper frowns. He doesn't know you. He doesn't trust you. So you leave. Hungry. Confused. And already a little tired. By noon, the sun feels different. It presses down. Your mouth dries again. Your shirt sticks to your back. You look for shade, but there's none. Only a small wooden bench outside the saloon. You sit, trying to rest. Someone walks by and stares. He doesn't say a word, just stares. You wonder if you've done something wrong. You wonder if sitting is a mistake. You get up. Walk away. In the Wild West, everyone watches. And watching means wondering. And wondering can turn into something worse. The streets are quiet. The houses are plain. No glass windows. Just shutters. No gardens. Just dust. You pass a barn. Inside, a man sharpens a blade. He looks up, then back down. He doesn't invite you in because no one does. You're not part of this place. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You reach for your pocket. There's no wallet. No card. No map. Just a few coins you don't recognize. They might help, or they might not. No one has told you the rules. You walk to the edge of town. There's a trail leading into the hills. You follow. Looking for quiet, looking for something familiar. Instead, you find more dirt. More wind. More heat. A broken fence. A pile of bones. A sound in the trees. Was it a bird? A snake? A man? You don't know. You don't want to know. So you turn back. Back to the town. Back to where you started. But even the town feels different now. Like it's watching you. Like it's waiting. The sun is lower. Now. The shadows grow longer. The wind gets colder. You hear someone cough. It's deep. Rough. No one helps them. They're on their own. You remember there are no hospitals here. No medicine. Just beds made of straw. And hope. You wonder what would happen if you got sick. If your head burned with fever. If your stomach turned, who would take care of you? No one, because you're still a stranger, and strangers are watched. Not help. You keep walking. You smell smoke. See a fire burning in a small pit. Man cooks something in a pot. He sees you, but he doesn't smile, doesn't wave, just turns back to the fire. Maybe he's afraid of you, or maybe you're afraid of him. You keep walking because in the Wild West, every meeting is a test and you don't want to fail. Your feet ache now, your lips are dry. Again, the wind is stronger. Dust blows into your eyes. You blink, you stop, you breathe, you wonder. Could you do this again tomorrow? And the day after? Could you wake up with no safety, no plan, just the clothes on your back? Could you fight if you had to? Run if you needed? Sleep with one eye open? Could you carry water 5 miles just to wash? Could you eat the same thing every day for a month? Could you go hungry, cold, alone? Because that's what it meant to live here. To last even one day. It meant pain. And silence. And choices that didn't feel fair. It meant trusting no one. Fighting when needed. And praying your horse didn't limp or your roof didn't leak. Because there was no backup. No spare. No help. Just you and the land. So ask yourself again, would you last a day? Maybe if you learned fast. If you stayed alert. If you kept your head down and your heart strong. But maybe not. Because the Wild West didn't care about who you were before. It only cared about now. How you moved, how you spoke. How you survived. It was a test every hour, every minute, and most failed. Not because they were weak, but because the West was stronger. So next time you watch a movie. See a cowboy ride off into the sunset. Remember this. They made it through the day. And in the Wild West, that was a victory.